Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
This is where we take, huge piles of research and boil them down into knowledge you can actually use. High-impact stuff.
Right. And today, we're really plunging into the psychology of influence. Human influence.
We're using this framework. It's called Methods. It's built on, well, decades of psychological studies.
And the idea is to pull out these really powerful, often non-conscious ways behavior gets shifted for you, the listener.
We want to get straight to the core mechanisms, beyond just, simple tips.
But, okay, since these tools are powerful, we have to start with a quick ethical point, a ground rule.
Yeah, that's important.
So these principles themselves, they're about persuasion, influencing beliefs, actions. It's neutral, really.
Okay.
But then there's manipulation. That's where we draw the line. That's using these things, unethically lying, tricking people basically for your own gain at someone else's expense.
Got it. So use with care. Make sure it's actually helpful for the other person.
Exactly. That's the key distinction. You have to act in their best interest.
All right, responsible use. Let's jump in then. First part of methods. We'll start with a little demonstration. See how fast your brain can be nudged. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Oh.
Think of a lucky dwarf. Just picture one. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Now think of a number. Between 1 and 10, what's the very first one that comes to mind? Don't overthink it.
Okay, if you're like most people, chances are the number 7 just sort of appeared, right?
Yeah.
If it did, you just felt non-conscious priming, that's the M in methods.
Mm-hmm.
Molding perception. Your brain was nudged without you consciously deciding.
Okay, but why 7? Why does the lucky dwarf thing point there?
It's about something called spreading activation. Think of your brain like a huge network, like a city map. Concepts are nodes, like destinations.
Concepts like lucky or dwarf.
Exactly. And 7, so when I say lucky dwarf, I activate nodes strongly linked to 7. Things like lucky number 7, maybe Snow White and the 7 Dwarves.
Okay, so those ideas get lit up.
Right. And that activation spreads, like ripples, to the concept, the node, for the number 7. It makes that pathway quicker, easier to access non-consciously.
So when I ask for the first number that pops into your head...
7 is already kind of warmed up, ready to go. It's the most available.
That implies we're being primed constantly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
By everything around us. Like we have less control than we think over our initial thoughts.
Well, yes. To a perhaps unsettling degree. And it's not just concepts, it's behaviors, too. There's this classic study, Barg, Chen, and Burroughs back in '96.
Okay, what did they do?
They had people do a sentence unscrambling task, seemed like a simple language test, but secretly some participants were unscrambling sentences with words related to being elderly.
Like bingo or Florida, things like that.
Yeah, retired, wrinkled, words associated with that schema, that mental framework for old. The participants didn't consciously notice a theme.
So they thought it was just a grammar task. Then what?
Then the experiment was supposedly over. They were thanked and left the room. But the researchers timed how long it took them to walk down the hallway.
Hey, don't tell me.
The ones primed with the elderly words walked significantly slower down the hall than the control group.
Wow. Just from reading words?
Yep. The words subtly activated the elderly schema, and that schema non-consciously triggered the associated behavior, moving slowly. They weren't aware of why they slowed down.
That's pretty profound. And it's not just lab stuff, right? This happens out in the real world. Media.
Oh, absolutely. Think about TV shows and commercials. The scene right before the ad break primes you.
How so?
Okay, imagine you're watching, say, Grey's Anatomy. Big, dramatic cliffhanger. Someone gets terrible news right before the ads.
Right. You feel sad, maybe anxious.
Exactly. That activates negative schemas, sadness, fear, maybe hopelessness. Now, what happens if the very next thing you see is a super cheerful ad for, I don't know, a vacation?
It feels jarring. Maybe I even associate the bad feeling with the ad.
That's the risk. You might unconsciously link your product with those negative feelings that were just activated. So you really want to place your message when the viewer is in a mindset, a schema that's receptive, not resistant.
So priming is about setting that non-conscious stage before you even start persuading consciously.
Precisely. That's molding perception, the M.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to the next piece of methods. The A anchors and adjustments. We saw how suggestions prime thoughts. What about using a specific number?
Right. This is where we get into the anchoring and adjustment heuristic. It sort of reveals the illusion of rationality. We think we're making logical calculations.
But we're not really.
Well, we almost always start from some reference point that's the anchor, and then we adjust from there. But here's the thing. We usually don't adjust enough.
Okay, let's try another quick one. Imagine You're going to buy something used online, maybe. Before you even think about what you think is a fair price, imagine the seller mentions, just casually, oh, similar items sometimes go for $9,999.
Right. An absurdly high number, probably.
Now, what's your first serious thought about what you'd offer?
Even if you know that $9,999 is ridiculous, your starting point for negotiation, your initial offer, is likely pulled towards that anchor, even if just a little.
It just shifts the whole range.
Exactly. And what's really wild is how powerful anchoring is, even when the anchor is completely, totally arbitrary, irrelevant.
This is the part I find fascinating. It works even when we know the number means nothing.
Yes. There's research where they had people write down the last few digits of their social security number or some random ID number.
Yeah.
Then they asked them to estimate something totally unrelated, like the number of doctors in the Manhattan phone book.
And the random ID number influenced the estimate.
Heavily. People with higher ID numbers gave significantly higher estimates for the number of doctors. And get this, warning them about the effect, telling them explicitly, don't let this random number influence you, didn't work.
Seriously, even telling
It
them...
didn't matter. Even offering a $50 reward for the most accurate estimate still didn't eliminate the anchoring effect. People just couldn't shake it off.
Wow. So our confidence that we're being objective, maybe not always justified, we grab onto anchors even when we're trying hard not to.
And this isn't just about estimating doctors. Think about really serious decisions. There's disturbing research on this in criminal justice with judges.
Judges? How?
Legal experts were given a hypothetical shoplifting case file. They were also told a prosecutor's sentencing demand, say, 3 months or 9 months. Critically, they were explicitly told this demand number was chosen completely at random.
They knew it was random.
Knew it was random, didn't matter. The judges who saw the random 9-month demand gave significantly longer sentences on average than those who saw the random 3-month demand.
So that random number acted like gravity, pulling their judgment.
Perfectly put. Pulled the final sentence towards it. It shows that in any negotiation salary, buying a house, anything, the very first number put on the table sets the bounds. It anchors the entire discussion.
Whether it's realistic or not.
Right. So the lesson is you need to try and set the anchor first, or at least be very aware of the anchor someone else sets, because it will influence the outcome.
Okay, so setting a high anchor strategically.
Yeah.
That brings us to a technique called door in the face. This isn't quite estimation. It's more about contrast, right?
Exactly. You start with a ridiculously large request, one you fully expect to be rejected. That's the anchor. Then you follow up with your real, much smaller request.
And the smaller one seems tiny by comparison.
Precisely. The classic study is by Cialdini from '75. Researchers went up to college students and first asked for this massive commitment. Would they volunteer at a juvenile delinquency center for 2 hours a week for the next 2 years?
Okay, yeah. Nobody's going to agree to that on the spot.
Right. Virtually everyone said no. But then the researchers immediately followed up. Okay, well, if you can't do that, would you be willing to chaperone a group of these delinquents on a single 2-hour trip to the zoo?
Ah, okay. Compared to 2 years, 2 hours seems like nothing.
Exactly. Compliance for just the zoo trip request alone was about 17%. But after first being hit with the huge 2-year request, compliance for the zoo trip jumped to 50%.
Tripled, almost. Just because of that initial crazy anchor.
That contrast effect is powerful. The first request slams the door in your face, making the second one seem easy to agree to.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've seen how subtle primes mold perception and how numbers anchor our logic. What about bypassing logic more directly? Influencing the body to influence the mind. That connects to consistency, right? In methods.
Yes, absolutely. This falls under embodied cognition. It's a huge area now. The basic idea is that it's not just mind over body. The body influences the mind, too.
Our physical state affects our thoughts and feelings.
Definitely. Your posture, your facial expressions, they can trigger corresponding mental and emotional states. You mentioned the pen in the mouth study earlier.
Right, holding it with your teeth makes you smile, kind of.
Exactly. It activates the zygomaticus major muscles, the smiling muscles. And researchers found that people doing this, just holding the pen that way, actually reported being in a slightly better mood. They even rated cartoons as funnier compared to people holding the pen with their lips, which forces more of a frown.
So your body's position sent a signal back to your brain. Hey, we're smiling, things must be okay.
Sort of, yeah. It triggered a positive association, a positive state.
Okay, so if our physical state affects our mood, how can we use that in, say, a conversation to make someone more agreeable?
One clear way is through nonverbal agreement signals, specifically head nodding.
Just getting someone to nod their head.
Yeah. Because we have such a strong learned association between nodding up and down and the concept of yes or agreement, physically inducing that nodding motion can actually make someone feel more positive about whatever is being discussed at that moment.
Is there research on that, like specifically nodding?
Oh, yeah. Wells and Petty, back in 1980, they had students listen to a radio editorial through headphones. They told them it was to test the headphone quality during movement.
Okay, clever setup.
One group was told to nod their head up and down while listening, as if saying yes. The other group was told to shake their head side to side, like saying no.
And did it affect their opinion of the editorial?
Significantly, the students who were physically nodding ended up agreeing more with the editorial content, regardless of what it was actually about. The physical act of nodding seemed to generate a more positive attitude internally.
Just the motion itself biased their judgment.
It seemed to provide this non-conscious confirmation signal.
Okay, so subtle body language matters. But what about bigger actions? You mentioned consistency. How do our actions change our actual beliefs?
This gets into cognitive dissonance. It's a core concept. Basically, we feel uncomfortable, we feel dissonance when we hold two conflicting thoughts or when our behavior conflicts with our attitude or self-image.
Like feeling like a hypocrite.
Kind of, yeah. And that discomfort motivates us to change something to resolve the conflict. Often, the easiest thing to change is our internal attitude to match the behavior we just performed.
We justify our actions after the fact by changing how we feel about them.
Especially if there wasn't a strong external reason for the action. This is called insufficient justification. If you do something slightly inconsistent with your belief for only a small reward, or under minimal pressure, you're more likely to shift your internal belief to match the action. I must actually believe this if I did it for basically no reason.
Okay, and that leads to another tactic, doesn't it? Foot in the door, using a small action to lead to a bigger one.
Exactly. It's the classic example. Get someone to agree to a small, easy request first. That initial compliance can then make them much more likely to agree to a larger related request later.
Could you give us the famous study example, the one with the signs?
Right. Friedman and Fraser, 1966, they wanted homeowners to agree to put a really big, frankly quite ugly drive carefully sign in their front yard.
Not something most people would jump at.
No. When asked directly, only about 17% agreed. But for a different group of homeowners, the researchers visited a few weeks earlier with a tiny, almost trivial request.
What was the small request?
Just to put a little 3-inch square sticker in their window that said, "Be a safe driver." Very minor commitment. Most people agreed to that.
Okay, easy enough. So what happened when they came back weeks later asking about the big ugly sign?
Compliance skyrocketed. For the homeowners who had previously agreed to the tiny sticker, agreement to put up the large, ugly sign jumped from 17% to an incredible 76%.
Wow. From 17 to 76%. Why such a huge jump just from putting up a tiny sticker weeks before?
Because agreeing to that small sticker wasn't just an action. It subtly shifted their self-perception. They started to see themselves as, oh, I'm the kind of person who supports safe driving, or I'm a good citizen who participates in these things.
They adopted a new identity almost.
Exactly. A congruent attitude developed. So when the researchers came back later with the big sign request, saying no would have created cognitive dissonance. It would conflict with their newfound identity as a safe driver advocate. Saying yes maintained consistency.
So they changed their willingness to put up a huge sign just to stay consistent with the image created by putting up a tiny sticker. That's powerful.
It really is. They essentially altered their view of themselves and their willingness to act, all to justify that initial small commitment. That's the core of using consistency.
Okay, let's pull this all together then. We've covered quite a bit. We started with non-conscious priming, how subtle cues mold our initial thoughts and perceptions.
Play like the lucky dwarf or the elderly words affecting walking speed, setting the stage non-consciously.
Then we hit anchors, how numbers, even random ones, pull our judgments and decisions, and how techniques like door in the face use contrast.
Yeah, the illusion of pure rationality getting skewed by reference points.
And finally, we looked at how our own actions, from tiny nonverbal cues like nodding to small commitments like putting up a sticker, can shape our internal attitudes and even our identity because of embodied cognition and our drive for consistency.
Cognitive dissonance resolution. And understanding the why behind these The spreading activation, the heuristics, the dissonance reduction, that's what lets you move beyond just copying
But
tactics.
lets you actually understand the psychological levers.
Right, so you can think strategically about influence in different situations, aiming to shape that underlying mental landscape, not just argue points.
We've definitely gone deep into the mechanisms, but maybe we can leave listeners with one more subtle, kind of actionable thought, something non-conscious they can play with.
Okay, yeah. Let's think about metaphors. We use them all the time without realizing their power. Consider the common metaphor. Good, up.
Good is up. What do you mean?
Think about language. Positive things are high quality, upstanding, on the up and up. Negative things are low down, down in the dumps, beneath contempt. We inherently link vertical position with positive value. Good is associated with up.
Huh. I never consciously thought about that, but it's true.
Yeah.
So how does that apply?
Well, if you want something, a product, an idea, a request to be perceived just slightly more favorably, where might you position it physically?
Oh, near the top.
Exactly. Research backs this up. Products placed higher on store shelves tend to be evaluated a bit more positively. If you're designing a web page, maybe put the option you favor slightly higher.
Or even in my own house, like if I want my family to eat the healthy snacks.
Put the healthy snacks on the top shelf of the pantry or the fridge. The simple act of positioning them higher might subtly activate that good up association, making them seem just a tiny bit more appealing, non-consciously.
No extra argument needed, just placement.
Just a little nudge using a deeply ingrained metaphor, something easy for you to mull over or even test out this week.
That's a great final thought. Really interesting stuff.
It is pretty fascinating how these subtle things work.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.